Ahoj, tak všichni online?
Já jo.
Taky.
A ty, babi?
Babi,
Musíš tam na to kliknout. Ne na to
babi,
druhý.
musíš tam na tu ikonku.
Sluchátko, babi.
Vypadáváš.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this debate after this very powerful and moving documentary. I welcome you to this 14th edition of the One World International Human Rights Documentary Film Festival in Brussels, or simply known as One World in Brussels. One World in Brussels is organized by People in Need in cooperation with the Czech Center Brussels, the European Parliament, and the permanent representation of Czech Republic to the EU. This screening is also organized under the program Ciné-ONU, and which is led by UN Regional Information Center, UNRIC. I am Fabienne Pompey from UNRIC, and I will moderate this debate. You can write your question on the comments section, whatever platform you're using tonight, and we will try to answer as much question as possible. We are together for 45 minutes or so. Please let us know when you write your question to whom you want to address it. We are very pleased to have with us tonight Veronika Lapina. She is Executive Advocacy and International Litigation Advisor for the Russian LGTB Network North Caucasus Division. Hello, Veronika. We have also Marketa Gregorova, MEP Green European Free Alliance and Vice Chair of Euronest. Dima Yared, Human Rights Officer from the UN Human Rights Regional Office for Europe. Hi, Dima. Hi, Marketa. And we are very pleased to have with us tonight Reka Valerik, he is the director of this documentary. He is using an alias, and for security reasons, he will answer your question, but will not appear on the screen to preserve his identity. My first question tonight, before I give you the floor, I give the floor to the audience, will be to Reka. Reka, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
So you did everything possible to make Kavach unidentifiable in the film, and we understand that the situation involves his protection. Can you just tell us, without revealing anything, if he is better and safe today?
Yes, he's much better today, and he's not anymore in Belgium as well, but he's doing much better, and his voice are doing good also. He made big progressions, and he still needs some progressions, but he doing well, and he is in love. So that, I think, it helped a lot, and I hope everything's going to be okay for him. He's such a positive person, which I didn't know how he was before, because I only saw him in this very sad conditions. So today he reveals how he was before, and I'm so happy to see him like this.
This is great news, and really happy to hear that it's much better and safe. I have a second question to you. How were the main difficulties you encountered to shoot this documentary?
I think the most difficult thing for me at the beginning was to choose the right protagonist for the film, because I met a few of them in Moscow, then in Paris, and in other towns. I choose Kavach not just only for him, but for his mother, because when I heard the voice messages of his mother, I was so touched, and I choose more her than him actually at the first. And it took me actually 2 years to do this film, because 2 years I become a friend with him, and I never shoot any image, because it was for me very important that he willing to do this film with me, and I didn't want to do this film just about him. I wanted to do with him. And at the beginning, he was so in bad condition, so he didn't understand what's happening around him. So that's why I wanted to take the time that he feel much better and not to traumatize him more with my camera or with my questions, because I didn't want to do that kind of the film, because I was not searching for a truth or something like this. I was wanted to understand what's happening after, when the cameras go away, from when the journalists go away, when it's no more news anymore, what's happening with these persons when they arrived in Europe. So that's why it took me more time, that he in better position, that he understand what I'm doing around him with my crew. So that's why it took us almost 3 years to shoot this film, actually.
Yes, actually, when we watch the film, we can feel this trust and confidence and kind of intimacy that you had with your so-called subject, with him,
Yes.
actually.
Yes, exactly.
And I agree with you that the voice of the mother is really something that is special and very, very troubling and moving. Now I would like to ask a question to Dima from the United Nations Human Rights Office. Dima, you just watched the film. What's your feeling, impression after this screening?
Thank you. First of all, I did want to congratulate Reka on a very powerful film. I think what struck me the most was, or at least what I take away from it, is the importance of expression. And this came across quite strongly, I think, in many ways, the importance of being able to express oneself. And this touches on many different human rights. It could be the right to life and dignity, the right to privacy, family life, freedom of expression, of course, an obvious one. And I thought this was demonstrated quite in many powerful ways in the film. On one hand, we had Kavaj's inability to express himself through speech, also the restrictions and the violence that he suffered in his expression of his sexual orientation. But even with all of these limits, we could still sense his desire to express himself through his martial arts, his clear passion for that sport, and his sheer physical energy and his playfulness. In that, I really enjoyed that scene in the park when he's walking with his friend and he's skipping and hopping, and it struck me very much as an image, because he's quiet in the whole movie, but you feel his energy and his spirit is there. So I thought that message was quite strong and very well delivered in the film. So
yes, thank you very much, Dima. I think you really summarized what we really felt for this film and why is it so powerful. I would like to turn now to Veronica. Veronica, good evening.
Good evening.
So I can remind our audience that you are executive advocacy and international litigation advisor for the Russian LGBT networks North Caucasus division. And I would like to know if you could tell us more about the LGBT plus situation in Chechnya and in Russia and the fate of this community, of the people from this community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for the question. I also like to join Dima in congratulating Reka for this amazing movie and yet another portrayal of the Chechen, the Chechen struggle, right? Of the struggle of the refugees, of the struggle of the people who are fleeing North Caucasus and trying to rebuild their lives. And I was very happy to hear that, the protagonist is doing well, right? And he has found love, and he has, his health is getting better, right? His situation is getting better. And that just heals my heart so much, because, we've been seeing, more than 200 people who have been, who have had relocated out of the North Caucasus, and, also trying to rebuild their lives outside of Russia. So that is very, that is amazing news. As for the situation in the Chechen Republic right now and in the North Caucasus, we are continuing to see what we have uncovered back in 2017 with the mass abductions and mass torture of LGBTI people because of their sexual orientation and or gender identity. We're still seeing that men are mostly targeted through the through the state orchestrated attacks and state sponsored violence. We're seeing how women are more targeted through domestic violence and through our conversion therapy of sorts and correctional rape. So this is all what have started, right, what have sort of unraveled itself back in 2017 is still ongoing, right? Even though we're not hearing that in the news much, we're not hearing that in the popular voice much, this is still the situation in Chechnya that we're seeing. And this is very different than in Russia, right? Russia is not necessarily does not necessarily sort of experience as a state orchestrated violence against LGBTI population, but from our internal discussion, we see how it is very possible of what is happening now in Chechnya might be the reality for the Russian LGBTI people in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask now a question to Markéta Grigorova. As an MP, what can you do to ensure that the rights of LGBTB plus people are more protected when they're arriving in the EU? And is the EU doing enough to ensure that the safety of refugees is guaranteed?
Thank you very much for the question, invitation, and also thank you, Reka, for this very important movie. It actually also helps to put this topic into the agenda of the European Union. And well, to be honest here, it is far from perfect. And I have to admit it, even as an MEP, and the European Union still have to do a lot of things to become more safer place and environment for LGBT people. While saying that, I also want to be more positive and say what is actually happening and what the EU is doing. Mostly I will, of course, being in the position of an MEP, talk about what is happening in the European Parliament, but it also, of course, touches upon the other institutions. I think one of the most important things that happened in recent months is LGBTI strategy that was created for solving all the persevering issues that are within this topic. One of them, I think, it's very, very actually important, is putting the gender-based and sexual hate crimes on the list of EU crimes, because with that we can actually tackle that even from the criminal point of view in a better manner. Also, what may be quite important is actually the online environment, which tends to be quite hateful towards well, it tends to be quite hateful in terms of homophobia and transphobia, of course. And there are several reports that are calling for putting such phobia onto a hate speech list, so-called, and to tackle it in the online environment the same way we do in offline. So there is plenty of initiatives, the strategy being the most important, but others too, that's happening. But yes, I am from a group, the Green Safa group, that actually pushes for more. So I can't really say, that I am happy with how the situation in the EU is now. And I do hope that we will be able to move forward.
I come back to you, Dima, from the UN Human Rights Office. We know that as of today, there is still 69 countries around the world that still criminalize same-sex relationship, which it's a lot. OHCHR has launched a campaign called Free and Equal. Could you please tell us more about the objective and maybe the early achievement of this campaign?
Sure, thank you, Fabienne. Maybe just step back a little bit. Yes, one of the main part of our mandate as the UN Human Rights Office is the promotion and protection of human rights worldwide. And this includes the most fundamental principle of the right to be free and live in dignity and equality for all. And this, of course, includes the promotion and protection of rights of LGBTI. So how we work as an office, we of course have different methods. I can come back to them later, like our monitoring work and our advocacy work. But to pick up on your question, together with other United Nations agencies, we have launched in 2013 a campaign called Free and Equal. And it's essentially a public information campaign that is intended to raise awareness about the rights of LGBTI persons worldwide. And it's really focused actually on what individuals can do as well as members of society on promoting and protecting the rights of others. And for instance, you can, the idea behind the campaign is to encourage people to educate themselves on the right, first of all, the situation of LGBTI around the world, but also what the rights are of individuals, to encourage individuals to speak out when they see instances of violence or discrimination or hate, to volunteer with organizations working to protect the rights of LGBTI, and to spread the message through social media or other networks. And some of the successes, let's say, of course, on social media, it's become quite a popular campaign. But beyond that, one of the, I'd say, main successes is this international campaign has triggered a lot of national level work in campaigns. So I think there's currently 17 national level campaigns that are now ongoing. And for the sort of broader Europe, there are national campaigns in Ukraine, Serbia, and Albania. The campaign also has brought on board private sector actors, which we see as fundamental in not just promoting the message of rights for all, but also protecting. So they've signed on, for instance, to what we call the global standards on LGBTI rights in the business sector. And there are currently over 270 companies that have signed on to these standards. So this is a bit the sort of overall message, I'd say, of the Free and Equal campaign. There's a targeted one on the rights of LGBTI persons on the move. And I'd be happy to go into more details to answer specific questions on that, and some more of our monitoring and advocacy work in the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Going back to you, Rika, you said earlier that you choose to film Kavach and to build this relation with him, which is trust, and it's and that you wanted him not to be the subject, but really making the film with him. And during this process, you met other people that also have been persecuted. And I was wondering if there's so many people in Europe, in this part of Europe, that still fear for their life, even though they have fled their country. Is it an isolated case, or is there a lot of this LGBTQI people that are in danger in this part of Europe?
I cannot speak for everyone, but I can speak only from whom I met. So I knew few people in France, in Belgium, and in Germany. And from what I understood, it's still here in Europe, it's still dangerous for them, especially in countries like Belgium, because the population of the Chechenian community is very important in Belgium and in Netherlands and in Austria. So for them, it's not safe inside of this community because they can be recognized because I mean, the Chechen population in the whole world, it's around 1 million people only. So everyone know each other by families, by cousins, and by friends, So it's easy to find a person actually. And when they arrived here in Europe, few of them have this choice to change their identity in the end of whole process of exile. So they can choose a new names and build a new identity, and they need hide from where they came, because if even they go to study a language, like in France, if they go to study French to integrate, so they're going to be in the same classes as other immigrants also from Chechnya, from Syria, and etc. And the people ask, where you from and why you left your country, so they cannot really talk about that, and they struggle with that. So it's something very that these people are more scary here in Europe, less in Canada. From the people I know in Canada, they don't scary. I mean, they don't have depression as this refugee in Europe, because in Canada they don't have the Chechen community. They kind of the first of representative of Chechenians there, and they're more free to talk there also. I know few people from Canada who gave the interview with open face, with their real name. So I think, I don't know how it's really going in Canada, but they feel more safer in Canada than in Europe, because in Europe, they really don't want to connect with Chechen community. They more isolated and they fear more, actually, to be honest.
Oh, okay, I see. So there was this will lead to a question for Veronica. I mean, it sounds like it's very special to Chechnya that this community abroad is targeting LGBT plus people when they've moved out, and they're still tracking them. Is this really something that's is special to the Chechen community, or is other community being tracked down like this everywhere in Europe?
This is, I think this is an interesting question. I would say that the Chechen, people who are sort of escaping torture, right? People who are being tortured back in Chechnya, they are being told by the law enforcement officers that they should not connect with human rights defenders. They should not, right? They should not report any of these crimes that the Chechen law enforcement officers have been and are committing, and on a daily basis to, to anyone, to lawyers, to human rights defenders. And this, right, because this gives us a platform to advocate on, on different levels. And this allows us to, with these multiple confirmations and with multiple testimonies, this allows us to sort of speak about this problem, right, as a structural problem of the Chechen community, right? The absolute lawlessness, the absolute, mass human rights violations that that this region is embedded in. So they become the enemies, right? Them being outspoken, even not publicly outspoken. See, and I understand why Reka doesn't want to show his face, right? Because it's an immense danger, right, for them and for all of the Chechen refugees and North Caucasus refugees across the globe, because specifically those who have been who are targeted by the law enforcement officers and who are ostracized in the within the community, because the diaspora is very strong. And the diaspora in Germany, for example, right, Reka talked about Belgium, but the German diaspora in 2017 when the news about LGBTI population in Chechnya and the crimes committed against them became public, the German diaspora stated very openly that if Chechen LGBTI refugees come to Germany, the diaspora will identify them and persecute them themselves because they think that being gay, being lesbian, being trans is something that is not that cannot be in one line with the Chechen identity, with Chechen masculinity, right? With this sounds a little bit, on a nationalist scale, but it looks like this, unfortunately. And so these people, right, these people who flee, who are queer and who flee the Republic, they immediately become the enemies, and they're being searched not only in Europe, right, but they are also being searched for when they reach our safe houses, right? We had multiple abductions happening, are committed by the law enforcement officers to bring those people who have left the Republic back and persecute them, even more. So this is the very unfortunate and I would say dangerous situation for the Chechen people in Chechnya, but also in Russia.
Do we have any data on people who flee to exile and have been harassed or killed or tortured outside Chechnya by someone from the Chechen community?
We monitor this, but I would not say that we can record all of these events, right? But we have had one of our refugee in the country X, right? I would not name the country. He just arrived, and then some of the neighbors, and he was settled down, I think, in the predominantly Muslim community, and his windows were shattered with stones. And this was right. This was one of the examples, right? How the news sort of circulates about these people, right? How people find out. It's also because people sometimes are careless in their communications, but also it's the you can see the level of hostility that the community can show towards such refugees, towards LGBTI refugees in general.
Thank you very much. Rika, maybe you can also answer this question. And is there any other community that is targeting gay, homosexual, trans, etc., like the Chechen do, or is it very particular to this community?
I don't know how it's going with other communities. I don't have this experience, happily, but from what I can say from Chechen community, it's kind of true. I mean, it's something very special to Chechen communities. And yeah, I mean, even one guy I know in France, he was targeted by Chechenians. So he should change his apartment and change his city, even where he was living, to protect him. So because he made, I mean, not him, but the organization in France made a mistake because they don't understand how these refugees should be separate from other ones. So they put them in center with other refugees. So it became a real danger. And they understood that only after. So the public also not aware about this situation. And that's why even administration make few mistakes which can lead to drama for those refugees. And just to remind, it's not directly related to LGBT refugees, but in Europe we have many cases when a regime from Chechnya order killing some opposants. It happened in Vienna, it's happened in center of the Berlin a few years ago, it's happened in France when I was doing post-production in Lille. One Chechen opposant was killed in a hotel in Lille. So yeah, these things happening. Maybe they don't do big news, but it's happening very often actually. So it's not just only LGBT refugees, but in general refugees from Chechnya, if they outspoke or they criticize government or something, they're not at all safe even in Europe.
I have a question from the audience for you, Reka. Two questions that going the same direction. One question is, aren't you worried the protagonist could be revealed thanks to the film? Is because in the film you can see him a little bit from profile, you can hear his mother voice, you can hear the name of his brother. Perhaps it could have been possible to find him. How did you make sure that he was completely safe? And other question that's a little bit linked to this one is talking about your protagonist that experiencing his story. Have you ever thought about making a fiction film to be able to develop his story more without the threat of unveiling his identity?
It's a good question. It was a really dilemma for me when I was doing this film, because when you're doing the film, it's audiovisual art. And in this case, I didn't have the visual of the protagonist and I didn't have audio, I didn't have his voice. So that was a real, I would say, a challenge for me to, if it can be possible to make this film. So that's why I tried to not use the techniques for TV when we cover the face or it's in shadows. So I tried to give him a face, even we don't see his face, and give him his humanity and back his dignity. So I wanted that he feel that everything's not gonna be okay, that for sure, but at least it's a new depart and maybe he can construct. So it was a problem, of course, with his face, but he was new in Chechnya. So the people who are looking for him know who it is. I mean, it's gonna be not a big challenge to discover who it is. I mean, it's not few MMA fighters who was gay and who was tortured. Of course, the people who searching for him and who knew him, of course, they know who he is. Even I don't give his name. It was just for me, how to say, morally, I could not do these things. But for people who really want to find who it is, it's not big work to find who it is actually, to be honest. And he's not anymore in the country where we filmed also. And he feel more safer now. And I think when I was doing editing, I show him every time when we can see his face less or, and he was always okay because he wanted, how to say, it was okay for him. And I was more scared that he was okay. So I was like, no, we see too much your face. We need to edit it better that we cannot see this. But in the end, now, I didn't know when I was doing the post-production, it was just before the pandemic, and now we can see everything online. And of course, when you watch it online and you do this stop motion with stop, so of course you can stop the image and see his face sometimes better. That is possible, but he is aware of this, and we was aware of this also. So I mean, yeah.
If I understand well, it's much more about his locations that had to be kept secret than his identity.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Reka is not your real name and you don't appear on screen. Do you feel threatened? Is it because of this film or for?
No, it's just because of this film, and I don't feel threatened at all for the moment. I just was a little bit troubled when the film came out in Russia in a film festival at Ardok Fest. Then it's like it was huge because that made me scary because I didn't knew that it will make so much noise in Russia. and the film was not permitted to show in Moscow. The festival should take away the film from a screening, so it was a no screening of the film. Even the film win the prize, but the public didn't saw at all the film in Russia, and that is very sad for me. And a representative of Chechenian diaspora in Moscow came to the film festival and to ask to take film out. And the festival was threatened, and they decided to take away the film actually for the safety of the public, of safety for the members of the festival, and etc. But me personally, I'm okay. Just yeah. First, when I did the film, I was thinking to write my real name, because again, if someone really looking to find who I am, it will be also not big problems. I think our days, as in a film, we don't give any names of the regime or something, and I try to escape all political controversy. I was thinking when I'm doing this film, I'm doing film about love, unconditional love between mother and son. It's out of journalism, out of politics. You will not discover any truth in this film and not big reveals. So for me, I should not have a problem. So that's why I want to sign the film with my real name. But then we say, yeah, you never know, because it can be some fanatic who will watch this film in France, Belgium, and Holland, I don't know, and will see this film, how to say, I offended his beliefs of being Chechen, and very particular things can happen, not in political or in it's not necessarily should come from Chechnya, but a refugee, a Chechenian people in Europe can do also harm to me. So that's why we say it's better if for safety for everyone.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from the audience to Dima. Dima, someone is congratulating you, OHHR, for this campaign, and question the fact that it's part of it is social media and online, and sometimes it's difficult for older generation to get information, to be informed about the right of gay people around the world, and they may have a stereotype that they carry from generation to generation. How to talk to this generation of people who are not that much connected?
That's a very good question. Well, I think this question probably goes beyond the question of just LGBTI rights, and how to ensure that knowledge about rights reaches as many people as possible. I think one of the main ways to do something like this is to encourage discussions at very local level in your community, whether that's within, a small nucleus as the family, but even broader through your schools, through in your workplace, in wherever you have a meeting of people that come together. And that's the most important thing about human rights work, but it's also ironically the most difficult part of human rights work, is to simplify as much as possible the rights, and to simplify the message so people understand in very common language what rights are, how we're all affected, and how all these rights are for all of us, and that it's not just a niche group or one individual who's entitled to a certain right, but that they really apply to everybody. So I think this question of social media and how to promote this message is a very valid one, and I think a good lesson also for the bigger organizations like my own, to think more creatively about how to use other means and other forums to have these conversations that go beyond social media. So I hope these kinds of movies and discussions, and especially now with the pandemic where we've all gone online, it's just been this the only place we've been able to connect. But as we slowly, hopefully, go back to offline, that we take some of these messages and make sure we keep having them in live, let's say, off social media. But thank you for the question. It's something for me to think about.
Thank you for the answer. And yes, I'm working in communication. I know how difficult it is sometimes to reach some specific audience that are not spend their time on Instagram or Twitter. And yes, this is very difficult. I have a question again from the audience that actually I wanted to ask myself to Veronica. We can hear in the documentary the mother of Kajav saying that the mullah has a cure for him. So the question from the audience is the re-education between brackets for LGBTQI in Chechnya institutionalized? Are there official institutionally that are typically used by family who want their relative to be so-called cured?
All right, that is a great question, and it actually channels into our last year. The independent expert on Soji, Victor Madrigal-Borlos, published a report on conversion therapy, where he actually called for conversion therapy to be included as a form of torture towards LGBTI population. And I think it was a very timely report, and it actually finally talked about different frameworks in which these forms of conversion therapy can affect negatively physical and mental health of LGBTI population. And in that regard, when we turn to Chechnya, we see how through religious institutions these forms of conversion therapy are sort of institutionalized. Yes, they are curing LGBTI persons from the genies or the demons. They're trying to, they're beating them. The religious officials who were invited into the homes of these people but also, this is one side of the conversion therapy that people are being exposed to in the Chechen Republic. We also see how persons, and mostly women, are institutionalized in mental health facilities, both unofficial mental health facilities and rehabilitation centers, also in quotation marks, and official state-owned mental health facilities where they are being severely mistreated with, they are being diagnosed with inaccurately with different mental conditions, including schizophrenia, because of their false diagnoses that are attributed to them, and they're heavily medicalized because of their sexual orientation. One of our public beneficiaries, Aminat Larsanova, is a survivor of such conversion therapy. So she went through all of these different institutions, both religious ones, and she was she was basically detained in a medical facility, and then she was also placed in this unofficial rehabilitation center. And we see how that affects a very healthy person's mental and physical health, these forms of treatment. So I think this needs to these things that are happening are out of the public scope, We're talking about torture, very formal, very formalized ways of how LGBTI population is being tortured by law enforcement in unofficial facilities, unofficial detention facilities. But conversion therapy is a problem of a similar scope, and it's pretty much silenced, and it's very invisible. And I think the more we talk about this, right, the other side of this, this violence that people are exposed to, the more we can actually see and the more we can actually do with this situation.
Thank you, Veronica. By the way, Dima just mentioned to me that OHHR has published a report about conversion therapy. You can find it on their website under document, issues, sexual orientation, conversion therapy. I'm sure that you can find it with a search engine. It's not a report from the UN, it's an independent experts report. Okay, that's one that Veronica mentioned. I have a question for Maketa Grigorova from the audience. I read it. Is it being discussed enough? How much influence does Russia have in the EU, and how vulnerable even EU citizens are? Shouldn't EU be tougher, impose stronger sanctions, and perhaps be more undercover and active in Russia as Russia is in the EU?
Thank you for the question. Well, this is a very broad topic, of course, not just in terms of LGBTI, because Russia's influence is well noted in the EU. And yes, it is actually a big topic. However, the problem for the European Union is that it does not have a common foreign policy. And maybe that's a surprise for some, because we have something that is called common foreign and security policy, but it actually is not common. It's 27 foreign and security policies, 27 ministers of foreign security that are trying to somehow reach a consensus. And of course, then there is the High Representative. But that's also like a diplomatic position. So that is one thing that would need to change to really be able for the EU to take a strong position in regards to Russia. I think that already the fact that we have some level of sanctions is very good, because well, we are the, I think, strongest economic or business bloc in the world. So we actually have the economic power to make known what the EU stands for and push for our own agenda. But we are not using it a lot. Because of what I said about the common foreign policy. So that's one aspect. However, on a more positive note, the other institutions, the Commission and the Parliament, are realizing the threat that is presented by some activities of Russia, and especially in terms of hybrid threats such as disinformation, troll factories, and well, influencing our democracies. I think that the EU is starting to make more and more strong stance, being it with its special committee, Inge, for foreign interference, or being it with the new codes of conduct that the Commission is issuing for the social media platforms. So yes, this is lying on the shoulders of the member states a lot still, but I also think that the EU is doing what it can in terms of its competencies that it has.
Thank you, Marketa. Rika, I have also a question for you from the audience, asking what you think about the future of documentary film festivals in Russia after all the recent developments at Art Doc Fest in Moscow. And I will add another question about, will your film also being presented in other festivals around Europe?
About the future of documentary festivals in Russia, yeah, it's a good question, because it's hard times for a free expression in total in Russia, and for independent film festivals especially. Already Art Doc Fest had problems since 5 years I think, and they already have a one part of the festival in Riga. So because of the law in Russia, they cannot show all the films in a competition. So that's why since 3 years, I think, or 4 years, they had the main competition revealed and shown only in Riga, because many films are forbidden or don't have the visa to to be shown in a film theaters. So that was they already had the problems. But this year they had, I think, in St. Petersburg, the part of Art Doc Fest was completely cancelled from the first night of the screening. So it was no screening at all in St. Petersburg, and in Moscow they cancelled already 3 screenings, including mine. So I don't know what to expect from the future. And I mean, if they want to really show freely the films as they always do, it's going to be each year more and more difficult. And one of the people from the festival did a very good remark, saying that the new agenda in Moscow and for documentary festivals coming from Chechnya, and what's happened in Chechnya, it was like an experiment about the human rights and the freedom. And now I think that the Chechnya is far away, and what's happened in Chechnya with all human rights issues, that it's far away from us. It's not in Moscow, but we're living in the same country. The Chechnya is a part of Russia. It's a Russian Federation, and slowly what's happening in Chechnya, it's going through all the country actually slowly. And like Veronica told you before, maybe the LGBT condition in Russia in general, it's not in same level as in Chechnya, but I will be not surprised if it's change in a few years. I mean, it's an experiment what we see in Chechnya, and the Europe or other identity will do nothing. And I think it's going to be sad for a documentary or even regular film festivals in Moscow or in Russia in general. Mm-hmm. And about my film, yes, the film was shown at ITFA for a world premiere in Amsterdam, and he won a prize at Hot Dogs in Toronto. And the few screenings coming, and it's in Italy, in Tel Aviv, in Warsaw, and in France also. So
at least you can talk about this situation to a vast audience in Europe and raise awareness about what's happening.
Exactly.
So we don't have much more question from the audience, so I will give you the floor one by one. If you would like to say to conclude this discussion, Marketa, I will go with you first, if you mind.
Thank you very much for the word, and also thank you very much for the discussion. I was mostly listening, but I think it's for the best, because I am also the person that's supposed to do later on something about the situation that people are facing. So thank you for the discussion. And also, I think it is important to mention that the EU is trying, or that's something we should focus on, to help the situation abroad, not just within the borders of the EU itself. And one of the most important parts is the support of civil society that's present in the countries and at the spot. So I do hope that we will also increase this kind of support, and that we will be able to help change the situation there, so that actually people don't have to flee their own countries just because of their identity. So thank you for this discussion.
Thank you, Marketa. We give the floor to Veronica, please. A last word.
Yes, thank you. I would just sort of briefly want to thank Freka for their work. I think that this is important to important me to portray, the quotidian life of, of Chechen refugees. And it's a very, it's a very beautiful, it's true, right? I would say, right, even though Reka doesn't want necessarily to associate, themselves with politics, I would say that it's still a very, right, it's still a political manifestation. It's even if it's about love, even if it's about, right, even if it's about our sort of the struggles, the human struggles, it's still, right, it still have so much political power, because we already know, right, the personal is political. And I think that this, Reka's work specifically is a manifestation of this, right, of this very old but still very powerful motto of personal is political. So I once again want to congratulate Reka and thank him for, for this movie, and for the bravery and the courage of his protagonist to portray this, right, a very different side of the story that we're all sort of living and reliving in. So thank you so much for this, and thank you for having us.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you for being with us tonight. Dima, last word.
Thank you. Actually, to pick up on what Veronica just said, I actually would like to use my words to show support to all the human rights defenders who work on this issue globally, of course, but here in Europe and broader Europe, because I think that's really where the courage and the bravery is, to day after day after day put the principles and the value of human life and human dignity above everything. And that, I think, deserves a strong word of support. And for the film as well as another way. I mean, filmmakers are also human rights defenders in many ways. And I think this is what this festival is about, and what human rights festivals try to promote. So I think it's very important that we support, whether it's through stronger EU funding and maybe restricting EU funding in certain circumstances, when rule of law and basic human rights and democracy are not protected. So support for all your work, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Politics is very important to have change happening, but culture, and film, documentary, books, songs, everything plays a tremendous role to make change happening. So thank you very much, Reka. Maybe you want to say a last word to our audience before we close this session?
I hope that I don't need to make other films on such a subject, that we're gonna live in a better world where I don't need it to do films like that. It's my wish, but it's very utopic.
Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you to all the speakers tonight. Thank you to the organizer, to One Word, and to Ciné-ONU. And I hope to see you soon for the next screening at Ciné-ONU. Bye-bye. Good evening.